They told me to ask my daughter for help paying for my own surgery. My son had a six-figure bonus sitting in his checking account, and his mother told me not to bother him with it. That sentence has been sitting in my chest for weeks now. Heavier than anything a doctor ever told me. I'm 61 years old, and I didn't say a single word back to my wife that night. I just nodded and went to bed. But before I tell you what happened after that, I need you to understand this isn't really a story about money. It's a story about who actually shows up when you've got nothing left to give them. My name is Walter Hale, and I live in a modest ranch house outside of Millfield, Ohio, the kind of place you buy when you're 28 and think you'll upgrade someday. I never did. The porch light's been flickering for 2 years, and I never quite got around to fixing it. It was a Thursday evening in early spring, cold enough that the heater was still running, when I sat down at the kitchen table with a stack of bills. I didn't want to look at. My wife Denise's phone rang from the counter, and I watched her whole posture change. "Preston, honey," she said, practically glowing. She didn't even glance my way. She just turned her back and walked into the living room like I was furniture. I sat there and listened to 33 years of marriage prove itself all over again. She came back 10 minutes later, smiling, and told me our son had just gotten a bonus check for closing some deal at his firm downtown. "That's wonderful," I said. And I meant it. Whatever has gone wrong between me and that boy over the years, I've never once wished him bad luck. Denise didn't ask about the cough I'd been hiding for a month, blaming it on the dust from my old machine shop out back. She slid the electric bill across the table instead. "Take care of this before Friday," she said. Like it was my fault, like it had always been my fault 10 years ago. I wasn't some fool who threw away the family savings. I bought 14 acres out past the old rail line. Land everyone said was a smart bet once the new interstate spur went through. Then a contamination issue turned up on the property next to mine, and the county froze every parcel around it under an environmental hold, mine included. I couldn't sell it, couldn't build on it, couldn't do a thing but keep paying taxes on land I couldn't touch. My credit collapsed. My business partner disappeared, and Denise never once asked if I was okay. She only ever asked how I planned to fix it. That was 10 years ago, and I've been running a small parts fabrication job out of a rented bay ever since. 6 days a week most months, coming home with metal dust under my nails. Somewhere in there, my son Preston turned 22 and decided his whole young life had been ruined because I couldn't afford his semester abroad. He's never quite forgiven me for that. Not even after I explained what actually happened with the land. In his mind, I gambled and lost, and he paid the price for it. My daughter is different. Claire is 28, works as a physical therapist at a clinic across town, about a 15-minute drive from the house. She was 17 when the land got frozen, old enough to remember what we used to have, young enough to watch me rebuild something instead of just grieving what was gone. She came by 2 nights after that call from Preston, carrying a container of soup, the kind my own mother used to make. She didn't mention money or bills or her brother's bonus. She just set it down, hugged me, and said, "You still coughing like that, Dad?" "Sounds worse." "Just allergies," I told her. She didn't believe me, and she never did. "You're seeing Dr. Newsom Thursday." "Don't argue." I didn't argue. There was never much point. Dr. Newsom wasn't smiling when he came back into the exam room. "Walter, I won't sugarcoat it. There's a mass on your lung. It's operable, but it needs to come out soon. Weeks, not months." "Okay," I said. "Because what else do you say?" Then the woman from billing walked in, apologetic, and told me my plan had a coverage gap for the specific procedure Dr. Newsom wanted, $4,000, due before they'd schedule the operating room. I sat in my truck in that parking lot doing the math 6 different ways, and it came out the same every time. I didn't have it. No bank in the county would touch my credit. I told myself I wouldn't call Preston. I told myself that for 2 full days, then I called him anyway. Because that's what a father does. You swallow your pride and hope. He's still in there somewhere. He picked up on the 4th ring, and I could hear a bar behind him, glasses clinking, someone laughing, Dad, can this wait? We're celebrating the Kessler account. I told him everything, the mass, the surgery, the $4,000 I needed by Friday. There was a long pause. Long enough that for one stupid second I thought, maybe, then his voice went flat. I spent years digging myself out of the hole your bad investments put us in. Ask the hospital for a payment plan. I've got a reputation to protect now, Dad. I can't keep carrying your dead weight. The line went dead. My own son hung up on me while I sat in a hospital parking lot with a mass in my chest. So he could get back to his celebration. I called Denise next, hoping she might soften him up. Don't you dare ruin this for him, she snapped. He worked hard to get where he is. Claire's got a stable job, doesn't she? Go ask her. I hung up and sat in that truck a long while. I didn't cry. I was past crying by then. I met Claire at a small diner off Route 9 2 days later, and I hadn't planned on telling her anything. She knew before I said a word. She always did. Dad, what's wrong? Tell me right now. So I told her, ashamed to even be sitting across from my daughter, a physical therapist who didn't have much more than a paycheck to her name. About to be asked for money her own brother had refused without blinking. I didn't even finish the sentence. Claire reached into her bag and set an envelope on the table, then turned her phone around so I could see a notification. A personal loan, approved, $2,000. Dad, stop talking, she said, eyes wet but her voice steady. There's also cash in there. I sold the Accord this morning. You sold your car? Cars can be replaced? You can't. She grabbed my hand and held it hard. I'll take the bus for a while. It's fine. I wept right there in that diner booth. In front of a waitress and half the lunch crowd. Claire was the only one who ever really saw me. I had no idea, sitting there, how much that moment was about to matter. They wheeled me into pre-op at 6 in the morning that Thursday, and the last thing I remember before the anesthesia took me under was Claire's face close to mine. You're going to be fine, old man. I already told the nurses you're stubborn as a mule. I woke up 11 hours later with a tube down my throat and a weight on my chest like a truck had parked. There. Dr. Newsom leaned in close. We got it all, Walter. Clean margins. I spent the next 2 weeks recovering on Claire's pull-out couch. Since my own house sat empty most days and Denise hadn't so much as texted, Claire's apartment was small. The kind where you hear the neighbor's television through the ceiling. She taped her new bus schedule to the fridge, right next to a photo of the two of us from some county fair. Years back, I looked at that schedule every morning and thought about her waiting at a stop at 6:40 while Preston drove some leased sedan to a steakhouse. It was 16 days after the surgery when the mail carrier knocked instead of leaving it in the box. 2 certified letters, one from a company I didn't recognize, Harlow Ridge Development, and one from the county environmental office, an address I knew instantly after 10 years of getting mail from them. I sat down at Claire's kitchen table and opened the county letter first. Remediation complete. Site released from the environmental hold, effective the previous month. 10 years. 10 years of taxes on land I couldn't touch. And it was sitting right there in black and white. Done, released. Clean. I opened the second letter next. Turned out the new interstate spur. I'd bet everything on a decade too early had finally gone through. Right past my property line, 14 acres that used to be frozen swampland were now zoned commercial. Sitting less than a mile from a brand new interchange, the letter was a real offer. Signed with numbers behind it. $6 million. Cash, 30-day close. I looked up, and my eyes landed on that bus schedule on the fridge. Claire's handwriting in the corner marking her new route. She's out there right now. Standing at a stop in the cold, I thought, and I'm sitting here holding $6 million. I didn't call Denise. I didn't call Preston. I want you to remember that. Because it matters for what comes later, I picked up the phone and called someone else instead. Gary Holt, who'd handled what little business affairs I had left after the land freeze. One of the only people who'd stuck around because I still paid him on time. Even if it wasn't much, I told him everything, the release, The offer, the number, there was a long pause. 6 million. Walter, that changes everything. That's exactly why I need you to pull something else first, I said. You remember that separation agreement Denise had you draw up 5 years back? Gary went quiet. The property and liability separation. Preston pushed for that one. That's the one. I need you to tell me exactly what it says. Word for word. He called back 2 hours later. Walter, I'm going to read you the operative language. Denise Hale hereby waives, releases, and forever discharges any and all present or future marital claim, interest or right, legal or equitable, in and to the real property described herein, including any proceeds or value realized there, regardless of cause. Regardless of cause, I repeated slowly. Does that mean what I think it means? It means exactly what we drew up, Walter. She wanted the house and her savings protected from your land debt, so she signed away her claim to that land entirely, good or bad, forever. Whatever happens to it now, a $6 million sale included, she has no legal claim. Preston was the one who set that meeting up, wasn't he? Told his mother it was smart. Said it'd protect her credit. I sat there at Claire's kitchen table with the afternoon light coming through the blinds, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt something in my chest that wasn't shame. It was clarity. Gary, I want to move on this offer. Quiet. I don't want a soul outside this call knowing until it's done. Not Denise. Not Preston. All of it, Walter. Every dime after my debts are cleared. Set up an irrevocable trust in Claire's name. She sold her car for me. She's riding a bus at 6:40 in the morning so I'd have a place to heal. Meanwhile, my son told me to ask for a payment plan, and my wife told me not to ruin his celebration. Fair already happened, Gary. It happened in a diner off Route 9. And only one of my children showed up for it. I'll have the paperwork ready by Friday. I hung up and sat a long while, listening to the window unit hum. Looking at that little bus schedule on the fridge, they're going to find out eventually, I thought. And when they do, they won't come asking how I'm feeling. They'll come asking about money. I wasn't wrong. But not for the reason I expected, and not when I expected it. 8 days later, Preston showed up pounding on Claire's door like he meant to knock it off the hinges. With Denise right behind him, he hadn't heard about the land yet. He was drowning in something else entirely. Some overextended lease and a credit mess of his own. And he'd come looking for a bailout from the one place he swore he'd never set foot in again. Claire opened the door with a look I recognized from her classroom days. The one she gave kids about to get sent to the office. You want to explain why you're pounding on my door? Preston pushed past her without answering. Then his phone buzzed and I watched the color drain out of his face as he read something off the county registry app. Harlow Ridge just logged a deed transfer, he said, voice shaking. 6 million. Dad, you sold the land and you didn't call me? Last time I called you, I said, calm as I could manage. You were celebrating a bonus while I sat in a hospital parking lot. You told me it wasn't your problem? So, no, I didn't feel the need to call the second something good happened either. Denise's arms were crossed. That money belongs to this family, Walter. You're being cruel. Cruel, I said. Is a man who refused his father $4,000 for cancer surgery calling his father cruel over 6 million? Preston slammed his hand on Claire's table. We're not asking anymore. Mom's filing for divorce. My lawyer's already drafting a motion to freeze every account tied to that sale. You hid marital assets, Dad? That's fraud. I stood up slowly, still tender across the ribs, and pulled 2 folded documents from my jacket. You want to talk about lawyers, Preston? Let's talk about lawyers. I slid the first one to Denise. You remember this? 5 years ago, you signed away every claim to that land, regardless of cause, on your own son's advice, to protect your credit from my debt. You didn't just protect yourself from my failure. You signed away any right to whatever came after it. I slid the second to Preston Claire's bank statement. $12, son. That's what was in your sister's account after she sold her car and took out a loan so I could get on an operating table while you were toasting a bonus. Nobody said anything. Just the window unit humming and somewhere upstairs, a neighbor's television bleeding through the ceiling. I didn't hide this to be petty, I said. I kept it quiet because I needed time to make sure it went to the only person who actually earned it. The trust is already finalized, irrevocable. The full $6 million goes to Claire. Every dime. Her loan's already paid off. Her rent's covered. There's a car waiting on her, nicer than the one she sold, though she fuss at me about it. Denise's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Preston just stared at that bank statement like it might rearrange itself if he looked hard enough. Get out of my daughter's home, I said. Quiet and final. They left in a silence I'd never once heard from either of them. In 33 years, Claire stood in the doorway after they'd gone, arms wrapped around herself. Dad, you didn't have to give me all of it? Yeah, I said. I did. I put my arm around her, careful of my ribs. And we stood there in that little apartment that wouldn't be hers much longer, not because she was losing it, but because she was finally getting more than she'd ever asked anyone for. Cars can be replaced. She'd told me once, sliding an envelope across a diner table. You can't. Turned out I couldn't be replaced either. Not to her dot and somewhere across town. My son sat down that night to figure out how he'd explain to his firm that the bonus he'd bragged about wasn't nearly enough to save him now, and there wasn't a single soul left in his corner willing to help. Thanks so much for watching. If this story stuck with you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it, and check out more stories just like this one here on the Revenge Hub.